We are back here for the next episode of the Yolo Uncovered series, where we talk to founders of the great Yolo portfolio. Today, none other than John Robin here, the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Dabble. How are you doing today, John?
Good, thank you, Pierre, and thanks for having me on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. And John, you co-founded Dabble in 2020, right, during the pandemic. And after that, you went live in Australia in 2021. And it's like new and exciting social first sports betting app. Following the successful launch that you had in Australia, you then pivoted into the US market, where you launched a similar product in 2023, a social first daily fantasy sports product, which became incredibly successful from the get-go, surpassing companies like ESPN Bet and Underdog Fantasy in daily app downloads. I mean, it was just an absolutely incredible thing to witness. You have 1 million plus active customers. But before we discuss the incredible success that you enjoyed with Dabble recently, take us back to the beginning a little bit and talk a little bit more about your background and what led you to decide to launch Dabble.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the kind words there. I guess to wind back to the origins, I was actually an accountant by trade, so I studied accounting in university and went into a couple of accounting jobs after I graduated. But I always had these side hustles around. I'd set up Facebook pages or social media accounts and giving out betting tips, like the multi-Bible or stuff like that, where I was, eventually got into charging subscriptions, and then I started working with sports books as an affiliate, so affiliate marketing. And I was sort of playing around with that for a few years on the side, and eventually it got too much fun that I decided I needed to make the leap across full time and sort of did a bit of that affiliate work with my brother Dave, who I went on to found Dabble with in 2020. So sort of between 2014 and 2020, when we started Dabble, there was a little bit of playing around for a few years, and then made the full-time leap into the affiliate marketing space, and eventually started Dabble in mid-2020, right in the middle of the first COVID lockdowns.
Amazing. And what was the kind of idea behind Dabble? Did you have to kind of conduct a lot of trial and error before you found product market fit, or did you always know that you wanted to launch this social first sports betting experience?
No, it certainly wasn't designed throughout that 6 years. It was quite accidental, just sort of stumbled into a few steps along the way that eventually ended up in trying to build our own app. I'd say the inspiration for the Dabble user experience did come in those affiliate days, though. As I said, sort of giving out tips and picks and subscription services, and we were in these environments where people wanted to talk about their bets in an interactive and social way. They wanted to share them with their mates. They wanted to find other people that were backing the same thing or find tips that they could follow. And we saw that in the work that we were doing in being the provider of that content. And you're in a bunch of these WhatsApp chats and you're seeing screenshots being shared of a bet slip from another bookmaker. And we just never really felt like there was a destination that you could do both of those things at the same time, interact and also bet. So it was really trying to bring together those two separate user experiences and bring them into the one destination. And that, I guess we iteratively learned that and decided that probably subconsciously between 2014 and 2020. And then when we started building, we're like, let's just do as much of it as we can at every step. We wanted there to be a social or connect or interactive experience between the customers, because we sort of were those customers and were the people creating the content prior to that.
Yeah, it's always been really interesting to me, being in the industry for a long time, how the online gambling experience has always been such a lonely experience. It's just you and the screen.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go to the casino or a casino sportbook, that's a social experience, and you guys were obviously one of the first who brought that social element into the online gambling sphere. It'd be interesting to know, John, so you launched the actual sportbook in 2020, and then between 2020 and 2023, you were very focused on the Australian market. Can you talk about like those kind of first year as a sports betting operator, and kind of the trials and tribulations that you had during your kind of Australia, the first initial Australia push?
Yeah, absolutely. Our third co-founder, Scott, he's our CTO, and he made a decision very early on that we were going to build the platform in-house and build as much of the tech as we could ourselves rather than off the shelf or white label or limit the amount of third-party integrations. And that was a pretty big decision that I certainly didn't know the gravity of at the time. So that 2020, 2021, 2022, a lot of the theme of those years was building this customer experience that we had dreamt of. And yeah, I don't think we quite realized the challenge that was and how long that would take. And it was a lot of, even the app that we first launched to the market, it was a very bare bones, sort of fixed win and place racing product. Didn't even have sports betting on it. And it had a few of our sort of MVPs of our social features, but it was pretty raw, and it wasn't the app that we thought we'd go to market with, that's for sure. And that was sort of late 2021 and almost 15 months into the journey. And then the year after that, and probably the 18 months after that, we were still building out these features that we probably originally thought would be in V1, and we instead decided to build and iterate as we go. So I'd say that was sort of the theme of 2020, 2021, 2022, was just trying to build this ideal dream state for our app and for the user experience that we wanted to create, which was to match the transactional experience of other sports books, to get parity on some of those products, and then to bring our points of differentiation in the social and the interactions between the users. So yeah, that was build and iterate was the theme of those couple of years.
And then, of course, you take the decision that now it's time to pivot, and not just any pivot, but you decide to launch a daily fantasy sport product in the United States, a market that is an absolute shark territory with massive incumbents, aggressive. They don't like competition. And here comes an Australian company entering the US market with zero market recognition or brand recognition or anything of the sort. Can you just talk about how did you decide that you're going to pivot into the United States of all places, and with a daily fantasy sports product that was different from what you were operating in Australia at the time?
Yeah, that decision evolved over time as well. In 2020, when we first started building Dabble, we always had international and global markets on our mind. We knew a bit about the American market with the PASPA repeal in 2018, and we always thought it would be a market that we'd love to try and bring our vision to. Back then, we certainly didn't expect it to end up in the form that it ended up and to go as well as it did go. But yeah, 2022 in particular, we had our sportsbook product. It was getting pretty much to the point that we wanted it to be at in the Australian market, and we were looking at how we could bring that to North America, to either Canada or the US. And we also started learning more about these adjacent categories like daily fantasy sports, and saw some of the challenger brands that were getting a lot of traction, especially in the states that are pre-regulation, that haven't regulated sports betting yet. And we saw an opportunity to try out our product experience, basically a proof of concept in a much more capital efficient manner, and also to a larger addressable audience from day one by entering into the daily fantasy sports space. So we changed a bit of the product and, spent 2023 working on the tech and getting the app ready and building our US version of the app. And then by the end of last year, we were ready to give the daily fantasy sports sector a crack. And yeah, it really was a proof of concept sort of theory. That was, will this social experience mixed in with wagering, will that resonate in another market outside of Australia? Because we felt pretty good about Australia, but we didn't really know how it would go anywhere else. So that was sort of, I guess, how that unfolded to end up launching a pick 'em game in the DFS category.
Yeah, so then you launched in end of 2023, what was supposed to be just a kind of trial then in the United States to see how it would go. And boom, the product just exploded. I'm really curious to know, what is the secret behind the success? How did you get that massive amount of visibility to the product and that huge amount of downloads that you got in such a short time? Again, with a brand that is completely new to the market as well. Like, what was the success, do you think, if you were to retrospect a little bit?
They say that every overnight success has sort of 10 years in the making prior to that people don't see. I guess the comparison for Dabble is that we'd spent 3.5 years building this app, or at least the back end technology, the platform that underpinned what would go on to be our user facing app, and that's the secret. To be honest, it was a lot of product development hours that went into mostly building it for Australia, but so much of that, like a very large majority of that, was transferable to taking to our potential US customers. And that's not just the features that the customers see, that's the back office, the trading, the customer support, the risk management, all of these tools that as a user you never have an appreciation for, but when you're on the other side, you're like, that just makes such a massive difference. So it just meant from day one we could approach this market with ambitions to scale, and that we knew that we could handle it. We knew our platform could support getting 10,000 new signups a day. We knew that the risk management was going to be okay because of the tools that we built. And yeah, I'd say that was what really allowed us to come in with a splash and to look like that overnight success, because it did happen really quickly on the user front, but there was a lot of work behind the scenes to put ourselves in that position, I guess.
I can imagine that. But from a marketing point of view, was it the success was due to word of mouth because of the superior product for the most part, or did you have any particular marketing initiative that kind of fueled that success to get the product in front of more customers that quickly?
Yeah, one of our key pillars is community at our core, which comes through in our social features. Like I can follow you, Pierre, on the app, or I can copy someone's bet or search them on the app or leave a comment on their activity. And it's all about the community, and what that means, or at least our hypothesis to roll this out around the world, is that if we get one customer, hopefully they can bring their group of friends, and one customer can turn into 5 or 10 through that referral and through that word of mouth. We, on top of that, in the US, compared to Australia, we have the ability to incentivize that referral by saying, hey, if you bring your mate across, we'll put $10 more in your account, and they might get something when they join as well. And that's something that we were able to leverage in the US that in Australia we haven't been able to, just due to the advertising restrictions in Australia. And that really put fuel on the fire for that community at the core. And that's also backed up and amplified by a strong social media presence and partnerships through social media based marketing companies and influencers and affiliates. And that sort of rounds out that picture of like, make the customer the advocate and give them a bit of an incentive to do so, and then amplify it with messaging all around them. Hopefully when they load Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, they're seeing people sharing their Dabble entries or talking about Dabble in a positive way. And that's the use case, and that's the hypothesis anyway.
Yeah, it's a brilliant growth loop, essentially, that just feeds itself essentially with time. Can you talk a little bit more as well about, so around 2021, after you went live, I suppose, you brought in capital from Yolo. Can you talk about what Yolo has contributed beyond the capital? How are they to have on the cap table? How is it to work with Tim and the guys over there? Just your general experience with Yolo.
It's funny, back in 2019, before the idea of Dabble was even on our minds, I listened to a podcast episode that Tim Heath appeared on, and it was called The Move from Affiliate to Operator, or something along those lines, because Tim's roots were in affiliate marketing as well. And at that time, I had genuinely no thoughts or ambitions to move to operator myself. But it was funny, 18 months or 2 years later, once we had ended up in that position that we were building our own app, and our paths ended up crossing with Tim at Yolo, it was a funny moment for us, and a collision of worlds. Actually, we tried to reach out to Yolo cold and didn't hear anything back, but because we sort of knew of the fund and knew of Tim. And then a few weeks later, we got an introduction from someone that I think they'd actually gone to school together. So it started a LinkedIn message between that person, myself and Tim. And I think about 40 minutes later, we'd gone from LinkedIn to WhatsApp, had a Zoom call, and Tim was pretty interested in investing. And Avert, I think, was on that first call as well. And it all sort of came together pretty quickly. They liked the concept, they liked the vision. And I think that's pretty reflective of our relationship. Since 2021, they've been incredibly supportive as an investor and as a partner. They've always been there if we need advice, and when we don't feel like we need advice, they're happy to let us go and do our thing. So yeah, couldn't speak higher of Tim, of Julian and the Yolo team. They've sort of followed along in our future rounds as well. And yeah, the best partner you could hope for, which we didn't really know at the time, and I think we're very lucky with that partnership. Yeah, they've been incredibly supportive.
Yeah, it's I can only resonate with that too. In our capital raise, a similar process around a similar time actually, and the process was very quick. From first introduction to actually getting the investment on board, and the fact that they do give that support and freedom to their portfolio companies is, from an entrepreneur's point of view, it is a dream, right? You don't want to be handcuffed by your cap table to conduct a strategy that you don't believe in, for sure. What would you say, John? Now you're 4 years into this project. What does the company do really well internally? Like, if you think about your team internally, what is like the strongest points in your company that you're proud of?
I'd probably go to the product experience that we put in front of our customers, and that always being the priority of the business. Like, whether it's customer service who are on the phones and emails to them, or the marketing team who are talking to them, or the tech and the product guys that are building the experience, or everyone in between. I think it's always putting the customer at the center and at the forefront, and I think that flows through in the way that we deliver the experience to those customers. And one of our pillars is to give a 6-star customer experience, like not just 5 out of 5, but what can you do to go above and beyond? And I think that has flowed through in everything that we've done, and I think it's been appreciated by our customers and by our community, and that feeds into that previous point that I was making about the advocacy, that if we want people to be spreading the word and getting their friends to join Dabble, then we want them to love Dabble. We want them to walk around wearing our merch, wearing our hats and our t-shirts, and we've been able to create some of that, which is certainly challenging as a gambling operator. So I think that's what we've done really well as a company, is put the customer front and center, and make it all about them, and whether it's a feedback channel in our banter section of the app, or just doing focus groups as much as we can to get real life feedback, and take that on board and genuinely use that in the way that we build our future products. I think that's where I'd go to, and what the company's done really well over the 4 years.
What about your own entrepreneurial journey, John? I mean, building and running a company like you've done over the last 4 years, it is incredibly stress-inducing, difficult, challenging problems, fires that need to be extinguished left, right, and center. What advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs, perhaps? What does it take to go through this journey?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is the people that you have around you, and my co-founders, Dave and Scott, the starting point, and then some of our early staff, like Tom, who's gone on to be our CEO, and our first sort of 10 or 20 staff that mostly came through referrals and through network and through introductions. That just makes such an enormous difference. And those early people, the difference that you get in the early hires compounds in the next round of hires and the next round of hires after that. Because if they're the right people at the nucleus, then as you grow and as you build out teams, then the values and the beliefs and the way that you want to run the business flow down and hopefully try and carry itself to as far as you can grow. So that sort of early people that you surround yourself is certainly the key ingredient, I'd say, to the success over the few years, and that compound effect from having great people around you. If I was looking back and giving advice to an aspiring entrepreneur, I think the thing that comes to mind is patience and timing. Timing is everything, whether it's raising the capital, launching the product, international expansion. It's all about timing, and I am by nature an impatient person. I'm always running and always wanting to get to the next thing and figure the next thing out. But that's been my biggest learning in 4 years, is the patience. And, Tom, our CEO, says there's always another spring carnival, or there's always another Super Bowl, there's always another EPL season. And I think that, it took a while to get through to me, but when I look back at it, I'd say that it's the patience and using timing to your advantage is the best thing that you can do in trying to build, because it's a long game, and the overnight successes don't happen, but the slow builds and the slow grinds and the iterations, they do happen. And you only have to look around at the biggest companies in the world and the biggest brands in the world, and a very large majority of them have built up slowly over time and have been around for a while. There's not a lot that pop up and go from zero to hero, and when they do, they're certainly the exception to the rule. So patience is key, and it can be tough, it can be really hard, but it always wins in the end.
Yeah, Tim is always good at reminding us about that too, that it's a marathon and not a sprint, this journey for sure. Final question here for you today, John, before I let you go. What does the future hold for Dabble? And of course, the question is begged to be asked. Do you have any sportsbook plans for the US, perhaps? Or are you looking at other market entries? Very curious there.
Yeah, we ultimately, our goal is pretty simple. We want to have our product in the hands of as many people as we possibly can. We think that people that want to have these wagering experiences on sport will resonate with the experience that we're trying to give. So the more people that can use it, the better. So that means more global markets eventually at the right pace, and tying in that patience point that doesn't have to happen overnight. But we want as many customers using the app and the experiences that we can provide as possible. And that will look like new markets, that'll look like new countries. The US is clearly a focal point for this year and next year, and probably indefinitely. It's really exciting to be in the US, and there's so much opportunity, so much blue sky and upside, and we're really enthusiastic about that US opportunity. But we're also cognizant that our Australian business is also doing really well, and it's a really nice market in itself. And there are so many markets outside of Australia and the US. So I'd say that global picture, with the right timing and with the right use of capital and bringing on the right partners, that's the plan. Within the US specifically, whether we go to the sportsbook product, we've already got it there, so it wouldn't be a huge jump. We've already got the app and the technology. It wouldn't be a huge leap for us. But I think for the time being, we're really happy in the fantasy space. There's a huge opportunity within fantasy itself. We're not in a rush to go towards sports betting. We actually think the user experience in fantasy is rivaling the sports betting user experience. So we're pretty happy here. We'll follow the regulatory pathway that's laid for us. That's mostly out of our control, how each state decides to legislate and regulate these forms of games. So a lot of that is not going to be decided by us, but we'll follow the path that's the best use of capital, the best use of resources, and the best way to get our app in front of as many users as we can.
Brilliantly political answer there. I love it. John, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person next week at the Yolo Partner event. It's been inspiring to follow the journey of Dabble, and I'm looking forward to continue to follow the success in the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pierre. I appreciate the time to have us on board and hear a bit more about the Dabble story, and looking forward to connecting next week.